sort of housekeeping rules. It would be great if you can follow them for a smooth functioning of the class. Of course, we all need a little bit of help from the Wi-Fi god. Let's hope she or he is in a good mood today. So Jaswant, okay, you have it on a screen. Okay, uh, basically keep the mic on mute unless asked by the sort of trainer. Uh, Turn the video off in case there are network issues. That helps. Uh, Please keep a paper and pen ready so that you may want to take notes if you want to ask a question at the end, or and you can even sort of put your questions on chat, type them out, and whenever the speaker is ready to take those questions, I can ask them on your behalf. We'll attempt to address most of your questions within the given time, obviously. Obviously, recording slides will be available after the class. So, yes, like it happens everywhere, please keep your phone on silent unless you're using the phone to access this. This session is being recorded. That will help later if you want to access it. So, that way. Next slide. Yes. Okay. Uh, yeah, you'll not be able to unmute yourself unless sort of we want it. Sorry. Okay, we live in an environment of this data overload, and obviously most of us are new to these platforms, so there will be some technical glitches. So please be patient with us if there is any problem. Lastly, we'll be sharing a feedback form on your mail for after every class. It would be great if you can give your honest feedback. That will help us sort of deal with the issues better. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's jump on to our, okay, what is this? Yeah. Okay, let's jump on to next, the class. The topic today is citizen journalism. Basically, why do we need citizen journalists? And we have Mr. AJ Philip to take that class. The course, in fact, is his brainchild, so he's the best person to speak about this. Philip is the secretary and chief executive of Deepalaya. Uh, Before this, he was in the trenches of Indian journalism as in various positions. Later, he held high editorial positions in many leading newspapers like the Hindustan Times, Express, and the Tribune. In fact, he headed their editorial pages for a long, long time, both Express and the Tribune. He also worked as a All India news reader. Not many people know it. Uh, and is sort of fairly regular on Malayalam news channels. Unlike our Hindi and English channels, they are probably civilized. I guess that's why Mr. Philip appears there. And he's a journalism teacher too. So I'll not take any more time of yours. So please begin. So can you begin? Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Kumarasamy, for the nice words you said about me. I'm very glad to be here to take this class. And why we started this course. First of all, who is a citizen journalist and who can be a citizen journalist? I know from the descriptions that you have given, I know that 3 or 4 students are journalists or persons with some journalistic background. Rest of them are not journalists. But does it mean that you have never been a journalist? Everybody is a journalist. In fact, every human being is a good communicator. How does a person come into the world? He comes into the world crying. He is communicating to the whole world that he is born. So we are all natural journalists. Then, as a journalist, there are 2 kinds of functions. One is that of a reporter, and the other is that of an editor. And we do not realize that we also play this role very beautifully. How? You may say, when you return home or when the class is over, somebody may ask you, how was the class? You may say, one stupid fellow spoke for a long time. That is what you are doing. You are doing reporting. And the person who is hearing you may tell you, it is bad to speak bad. It is bad to say something bad about your teacher. Even if you are silly, don't say that. What is that person doing? He is editing you. So we all do journalism every day. In fact, without journalism, without reporting and editing, life is almost impossible. And when you think about journalism, who could be the first reporter? Can anybody make a guess? If you go to Hindu mythology, I probably think that Narada was the first reporter because he used to carry news from one person to another person. So he could be described as the proto-journalist or proto-reporter. And who could have been the first foreign correspondent? I think it was Lord Hanuman, because he went all the way to Sri Lanka to find out what happened to Sita and come back and report to Lord Ram. So these were the two proto-journalists. In coming to our day-to-day life, we all, as I said, we all practice journalism in our own day-to-day life. And do you think that a person has to have certain qualities to become a journalist? Journalism, many people think that it's only a person who has a good command of the English language, if he's an English journalist, should be a journalist, can be a journalist. Is that so? Do you know how many words are there in the English lexicon? According to the Oxford Dictionary, there are about 275,000 words. Is it possible for each of us to learn so many words? It is impossible. Does that mean that we cannot be a good English journalist? We can be. For instance, Shakespeare. Take the case of William Shakespeare. He used only 35,000 words. Probably he knew another 35,000 words. That is what the experts have found out. That comes to about 70,000 words. A good English reader or a person who speaks good English, he certainly knows more number of words. How? For instance, William Shakespeare did not know the word delete. He did not know the word computer. He did not know the word access. These are words which he did not know, but which we know. So what I wanted to say was that you need not be a pundit in English to become a journalist. In fact, in the British Broadcasting Corporation, they have a dictionary. It has only 2,000 words. How many? Only 2,000 words. And I'm sure everybody attending this class knows those 2,000 words, which means every one of you can be a BBC correspondent, or he can be an All India Radio reporter. Why? Because he or she knows 2,000 and more words. So that brings up the point that everybody who knows 2,000 words can be a good journalist. So you need not know a lot of words to become a good reporter. Now come to think of it, who do you think is the greatest journalist that India has produced? Can anybody mention or think about the greatest journalist India has produced? I think Mahatma Gandhi was the greatest Indian journalist because he edited 6 magazines or newspapers in his time. And remember, he was not trained as a journalist. He did not go to a journalism institute to take a diploma course. He was a citizen journalist. As a citizen journalist, what did he do? Do you know how much he wrote? He wrote his complete collected works. Recently, it was published 2 years back. It was published by the government of India. And it has 100 volumes. Earlier also it was published, but recently 2 years ago it was digitized. So it is available online. And Mahatma Gandhi wrote 100 volumes. His complete works is 100 volumes. These 100 volumes means, 55,000 pages are in his books. 55,000 pages. And each page is 400 words. What would be the number of words? He had written nearly 6 crore words. No journalist in India has ever written. And what is the great quality of Mahatma Gandhi's writing? If you read Mahatma Gandhi's writing, you will notice that he used simple sentences. He used simple words. He never wrote anything which was complicated. So he was a very simple writer. Why? Because he was a great communicator. Nobody in India knew the people of India as much as Mahatma Gandhi and used a language which everybody could understand. So that is one great qualification that a citizen journalist should have, and that is his ability to use the simplest and easiest language to communicate. So by all means, Mahatma Gandhi was the greatest journalist. And if you read his works, if you read his magazines, you will find that he was one person who took a lot of risk. What was the risk? He was one person who did not take an advertisement in these magazines. All his magazines, all the 6 publications were without advertisement. That doesn't mean that Mahatma Gandhi was making loss. No, almost all his newspapers were making profit. How was he making profit? Because he was able to sell his idea and he was able to sell his magazine. So the subscriber base was what gave him money. And Mahatma Gandhi, as he often himself would say, he was a benia. It is not my word. He often used to say that he is a benia and he knew how to make money. So Mahatma Gandhi was one person who made money even for signature also. Even for autograph, he used to take 1 rupee. Of course, that rupee was not used for his own comfort. It was used for the freedom struggle. So he was one person who knew how to get money and how to run a magazine profitably. So he was a great model for journalists. And in India, how did journalism begin? If you read the history of journalism, you'll find that there was a gentleman called James Hickey. James Hickey was a Britisher, and he started a paper called the Bengal Gazette. And he started it in 1870. And when he started this paper, what was his purpose? His purpose was to make some money. Of course, he did not have any other purpose. So he started this paper basically to make money. But I had an occasion to read many of the old issues of this particular paper. And I found that he was a great journalist. Although he was a muckraker, he was a great journalist as well. He was able to highlight many corruption cases during the British regime. And that is why Warren Hastings, who was the Governor General at that time, he did not like this man's reporting and he banned the publication. And he was forced to close down the Bengal Gazette. Why? Because a lot of fines were imposed on him, and there was a time when he could no longer carry on his mission. That is how the Bengal Gazette was closed down. Then, for nearly 22 years, there was no newspaper, and that is how the first English newspaper, what we can broadly call as a popular newspaper, was the Friend of India. The Friend of India was started from a small place in India called Serampur near Calcutta. When it was started, this was a small newspaper. And if you open today the Times of India, if you look at the edit page, you will find at the top, directly founded and directly descended from the Friend of India, founded in 1892 by William Carey, that you can find on the Statesman editorial page. Now, the point I wanted to make was, how did journalism as a institution come into being? See, if I mentioned about, I mentioned it in passing about Narada. If you take it, from a biblical point of view, the prophets, as described in the Bible, were the proto-journalists. They were journalists. How were they journalists? They were journalists because they had the courage to say on the face of the kings at that time that they were wrong. Why could they say so? They could say so because they were free. They had the freedom and they exercised the freedom. They exercised the authority. They believed that their power came from God. Because of that, they could tell on the face of the king that he was corrupt. So that is why journalism is considered prophetic in origin. And as a modern institution, it started in the 16th century. How did journalism start in the 16th century? There was a group of people called the Puritans. They were part of the church in England. At that time, the Puritans were people who thought the church was corrupt. They found many corrupt dealings in the church, and these people began to question them. When they began to question the corrupt church, what the church did was to excommunicate them. They were thrown out of the church, so they lost the pulpit to speak. So what they did was they brought out small pamphlets. They brought out those pamphlets, and over a period of time, initially these pamphlets were critical of the church. They criticized only the church. As the pamphlets gained circulation, people realized, yes, this is some power which they have. They can criticize the church. Then they realized they can also criticize the state. They can also criticize the government. They can also criticize the local authorities. That is how the newspaper came into being in the British, in England in the 16th century. So as I said, Puritans were people who could not practice their religion in Christian England. So what they did was, many of them migrated to the new world, which is the United States. Wherever these people went to the United States, wherever they settled down, what they did was they would build a school, and they would also have a small newspaper of their own. That is how in the in the US, whichever smaller town there was also a newspaper, and there was also a school, there was also a college. Like that, institutions began. So Puritans were the ones who introduced journalism in the world. And if you have heard about a writer called John Bunyan, who wrote the book Pilgrim's Progress, he was a Puritan. And that is why he was put in jail. He remained in jail for a long time. So coming to India, it was the missionaries who started actually the newspapers in India, the press, modern press. And if you can look at all the languages, whether it is Bengali, Hindi, Tamil, Urdu, Punjabi, Assamese, Marathi, or whatever be the language, or Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, in all these languages, the first newspapers were produced by the missionaries. And subsequently, people realized that there is power in the press, and people began to exercise that power. So our political leaders learned from it that they can also have newspapers. That is why Mahatma Gandhi, to start his political career, he started a paper while he was in South Africa called Indian Opinion. Why did he do that? He knew that this is one weapon with which he can fight for the rights of the people in South Africa. And when he came to India, he started many newspapers. As I said, 6 newspapers he founded. And during the freedom struggle, if you notice that all the political leaders, all the top leaders of the country, they were also editors. Like, for instance, Jawaharlal Nehru edited a paper. Gandhi edited many papers. And so all the political leaders had their own newspapers. And newspapers became so powerful. And in India, and it is also known as the fourth estate. Many people are under the impression that the press is called the fourth estate because the first estate is the executive, judiciary, and parliament. No. When this term was used first in Britain, the first estate was the king or the queen. The second estate was the House of Lords, and the third estate was the House of Commons, and fourth estate was the press. In India, we don't have the king. We don't have House of Lords. We, of course, Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha is there. But in India, generally people consider the first 3 estates are the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. And the fourth is considered the press. So as I mentioned, citizen journalists are as old as Mahatma Gandhi. Citizen journalism actually journalism is not something new. There was a time when if you wanted to be a journalist, you had to pass a degree. You had to take a degree. And then you had to do a course in journalism. And then you have to work in a newspaper. And then only you can become a journalist. But today, because of technology, all this is within the hands of people like you and me. For instance, I had an ambition, I had a dream. And the dream was to write a daily column. When I join a newspaper, my dream was to write a daily column in a newspaper because I had heard about, the column called Over a Cup of Tea by Pothan Joseph. So that was my ideal. I wanted to be a editor of a newspaper, not because it gave me a lot of money or power or prestige. I wanted to write a daily column. That is why I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be an editor. Today, I don't have to be an editor to write a daily column. I can even write a weekly column. Sorry, I can even write a hourly column. Why? Because we have the social media there. We can utilize that power. Today, social media has grown so strong, and the fourth estate or the print media and the electronic media have become weaker. How, for instance, after the advent of COVID, the newspaper circulation has fallen drastically. For instance, in the colony in which I live, I know because I go in the morning to the gate to pick up my newspaper. I know how the number of newspapers that my neighbors in the colony have stopped subscribing to. So only a few people now read the newspapers. And another thing I have noticed is that many of my friends have also started not listening to television. That doesn't mean that they are not getting information. They are getting information. From where do they get the information? They get the information from social media. And this is not a new phenomenon. I can tell you one photograph, which all of you might have seen. This was in 2006. This photograph was taken by a citizen journalist. He was a policeman in Iraq. What he did was, he secretly took the picture of Saddam Hussein's body. His face, he took the picture. Of course, he took great risk. And he was later on identified. And I don't know what happened to that particular policeman. He was arrested also. What this policeman did was, he took the picture and then published it all over the world. All the newspapers, all the news channels, all the television, all the radio. I mean, radio could not publish. Every newspaper, every publishing house had this picture. And it was a bad picture also. Because at that time, the policeman did not have a good camera. At that time, the mobile technology was also not as great as it is today. So his camera was not that great. But it was grainy picture. Yet, the picture was published all over the world. Why? Because that picture confirmed. There were a lot of speculations whether Saddam Hussein was hanged to death. And that picture confirmed for the first time that he was indeed killed. So that was confirmation. That was who took that picture. It was taken by a citizen journalist. Now go back in history. In 1962, when President Kennedy was assassinated, there was one videographer. There's not a videographer. He had a camera, a movie camera. He had a small movie camera. He was in Dallas, and he was taking pictures of Kennedy. And when Kennedy was shot, he had the picture in his camera. And the same evening, the police came and took the camera from him. Of course, he gave the camera for investigation. But the next day, Life magazine bought his picture for $150,000. Today, that $150,000 would be worth not less than 15 million US dollars. That was the kind of money that one shot of Kennedy being assassinated fetched Mr. Abraham Sapruder. That was his name, Abraham Sapruder. He was an Ukrainian cloth merchant. He got $150,000 US dollars at that time. And he was a good man. What he did was, in the sequence of film, there 13. And that frame showed Kennedy's head being exploded. So he told Life, he gave permission to Life to publish it, but he withheld the permission to publish that particular shot, which was frame number 313 in his film. Why? Because that particular shot showed Kennedy's head being blown up. And not only that, he also gave 25,000 US dollars after the money he got for a policeman who was killed by the assassin at that time. So the policeman also got 25,000 from Mr. Abraham Sapruder. He was a great person. That is why I'd say he was a great person. And what was he? He was a citizen journalist. Citizen journalist. So citizen journalists are in great demand. And recently also in India, for instance, there was a recent one case in Tuticorin or Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. A father and son, they were killed by the police. What had happened was the father was a 62-year-old person. This person, he had an altercation with the policeman. So the policemen took him to the police station. And when he reached the police station, they tortured him. And then in the meantime, his son was also called. His son was 35 years old. He was also called. And when the son found that his father was being beaten by the police right in front of him, the son reacted. He protested. And then what had happened? He was also tortured. And both of them were killed. They were killed. A 62-year-old person and a 35-year-old person were killed. The police refused to file an FIR. The police failed to file an FIR. Then what had happened? One young citizen journalist, she became very emotional. She came out with a video. She explained the whole thing. She explained what happened. And she gave a video commentary on the death of these two people. And it was so moving, so passionate that the social media took it up and it became viral. And eventually, the police had to act. Eventually, the government had to act. The state had to act. And these policemen are in jail now. They are facing investigation. And they will be tried for the killing of the father and son. The point I wanted to make was that but for this citizen journalist, this case might not have been registered. This case might not have been registered, and the guilty would not have been punished. Now there is a possibility that they would deliver justice. Now, unfortunately, this citizen journalist deleted her video from the YouTube. Why did she delete it? I wanted to find out. So I checked and I found that she did it under the advice given by her own lawyer. What had happened was she became emotional. While being emotional, she said things which will not stand scrutiny. She said many things. She accused the police of many things which would not stand judicial scrutiny. So the point is, a citizen journalist can be a good citizen journalist. He can do a lot of service to society, but he can do so only if he knows the limits of journalism. And only if he knows the limits of journalism can a person be a good citizen journalist. Today, as I said, anybody who has a mobile phone can publish. He can publish a newspaper. He can start a channel, television channel also. Anything is possible. But remember, there are also certain laws which govern journalism. There are certain ethics which involve journalism. There are certain principles which govern journalism. Unless a person knows these things, he will not be able to practice good journalism. That is what had happened to the young lady who covered the particular incident in which a father and son were killed. Why the poor girl did not know certain rules of journalism? Because she was passionately moved by the incident. So she became very passionate. In the process, she forgot certain aspects of journalism. So when we thought about introducing this course, my purpose was to train the people, to train citizen journalists. They should know what are the limits of citizen journalism, to what extent then they can go, to what extent they cannot go. Once they know these limitations, they will be able to practice as good journalists. That is why we introduced this particular course. And I also want to tell you, recently there was an accident, a plane crash in Karipur in Kerala. When the plane accident took place, when the Air India flight number 1344, crashed in Karipur, who were the ones who took the first pictures? The first pictures were taken by citizen journalists. By the time press photographers reached there, the citizen journalists had already sent the pictures. And many newspapers in Delhi, I found, had taken pictures from citizen journalists. So today, citizen journalism has become very effective. In fact, as we move from one state to another, we will realize that the role of citizen journalists will improve. Today, there was a time when newspaper business was very commercial. Today, for instance, when I started my career in 1973 as a journalist, at that time when I joined a newspaper, I found that I could identify at least 60, 70 points at which the news had to pass through. Now, it was filtered at various stages, at least 60, 70 points. The point from where you compose the story, you give it to the sub-editor who subs it, and then it goes to the chief sub-editor, he sees it, then it goes to the news editor, he clears it, then it goes to the lino type maker who composes the matter, and finally it is put on the page, and by the time it is printed, it would have passed through at least 60, 70 people. And each of them was a gatekeeper. Today, a citizen journalist doesn't have that facility. Today, what I do is, when I publish something on Facebook, I myself do not know whether what I wrote is exactly correct. So I depend on my friends, I depend on my readers to check and read and tell me. So what we should do is, a citizen journalist cannot be lazy. He has to check his facts. And for in journalism, there are 3 big rules that a journalist should follow. Rule number 1, check your facts. Rule number 2, check your facts. Rule number 3, check your facts. So checking facts is very important for not only traditional journalists, but for citizen journalists also. Unless you check your facts, unless you gain credibility, your writing will not get the kind of respect that you expect to get. Today, social media is a great platform. Social media can be described in various ways, and it's a great platform. But at the same time, you should also remember that unless you have credibility, often what you write is only you yourself read. There are many bloggers. They write blogs, but many of the blogs are read by whom? Read by themselves or their close friends or their close relatives. No one else reads it. I have a friend. She lives in Gurgaon, very close to New Delhi, and she writes a blog, and she has lakhs of visitors to her blog. Why does her writing get lakhs of visitors? And she also gets money. How does she get money? Because Google ads are also played there. So her article is read so much that Google ads find it convenient to place their ads there, and they get money, and she also gets money. Why is she able to get so many viewers? It is only because she has credibility. She writes well. People expect something. So as citizen journalists, we should also be good. We should also take all the efforts to ensure that what we write is absolutely correct. It cannot be questioned by anyone. That is what we should aspire to do. Similarly, photography or video. We can take photographs, we can publish photographs, but do you know that taking photographs of people without their permission is absolutely a no-no? I remember once I went for a program in Bangalore, and it was a program of disabled people. I was there, and the program is being conducted by a person who was visually challenged. So I wanted to take his photograph. So I sought his permission. Sir, can I take your photograph? Then that gentleman told me one thing which was very interesting. He told me, he is, as I said, visually challenged. He told me, Mr. Philip, you are the first person who sought my permission to take my photograph. So we should be knowing these rules. We should know the rules. The laws are very strict. For instance, if you don't publish anything, you just forward a particular message, you forward a visual, you forward a photograph, or you forward a video, then you can also be challenged. You can also even be arrested. The laws are very strict. So we should know as citizen journalists what are our strengths and what are our limitations. That is why when Deepalia thought of this course, we contacted a lot of people who are well versed with journalism, And that is why we were able to collect about 12 people to take classes on various aspects of citizen journalism. I was just trying to give a framework within which the course will be held. I am sure over the next 1 month, all of you will be able to gain much from our faculty members who are all experts in their own fields. And I'm sure you will all benefit from it. Now, any questions? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Suki Iyer has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Suki.
Who?
Suki Iyer is asking how to. Okay. How do in today's world of fake news can we check facts?
Yeah, fact checking is, I think, one of the subjects we will be teaching. Fact checking is very important. Which are, facts can be checked very easily. There are ways and means which facts can be checked. First of all, you have to use, wherever possible, use authentic sources. For instance, Wikipedia may be a good source, but Wikipedia cannot always be correct. For instance, if I write Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi 10 times, it may appear in somewhere, and Wikipedia, somebody may mistake Indira Gandhi as our Prime Minister, and he may correct it there. So a person who checks Wikipedia may be misled. So Wikipedia may not be the right source, but to ensure, but there are also websites where facts are checked, where fake videos are checked, authenticity is checked, and there are a group of journalists who do it regularly. So there are ways in which you can check facts. One simple thing is go to the authentic source. Go to authentic source. For instance, Encyclopedia Britannica for all the facts. Encyclopedia Britannica is a very good source. Of course, not all facts and all the current events may not be, you cannot check. But similarly, you can check in good newspapers. Good newspapers would certainly have their own checking methods. So they can be a good source. So there are different ways in which you can fact check. And fact checking is very important. And I think one of our faculty members will be taking a class on fact checking and the tools which are available for fact checking. Is that all right?
Yeah, because there's so much of information out there, so sort of processing fake news is difficult. But if something is too good to be true, it must be fake. So you need to be always careful when you see something or the other.
Yeah.
So that's the way it is. Okay. Any other question, please? Okay. Yeah, Suki, can you enable our audio just one? Suki Ayers, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Suki.
Yeah, so my question was that as a citizen journalist, what are the platforms that one can share a story? I mean, like I'm just some random person who's, let's say living in the city of Bangalore, and I pick up a story and I, take the facts, etc., put it together. How do I find a platform where I can share it, which is, which has enough readership or viewership or whatever? Apart from, of course, putting on my own social media.
Yeah, social media is a platform. For instance, if you have a long-term vision or a long-term plan, you can have a blog. You can start a blog. Initially, the blog, there may not be many visitors, but if you promote it and if the people realize that you are a good writer or you write good stuff, then your friends would be enthused to visit your blog and then they will be reading it. Similarly, Facebook. You can also have a large following on Facebook. You can also have a following on you can have your own website. You can start if you are good in communication. For instance, if you like video presentation, then you can make your own video and make it available on the social media, and you can give the link. Over a period of time, initially you may not get good readers, but over a period of time you will be able to get information, get viewership or readership or yeah. Similarly, you can start your own newspaper. Newspaper in the sense, not a full, you can have, suppose you are good in opinion writing. If you are good in opinion writing, you can start your own editorial writing on any subject of your choice. If you write and then people find that the stuff has content in it, then they would like to read it. Then there is another way of getting instant attention. For instance, right to information. Right to information is a great power that we citizens enjoy. If suppose you, and it doesn't cost much, if suppose you get information, you write a question. You write a question, for instance, how much money Sri Narendra Modi spent for reaching a particular place. And if suppose the figure is 2 crores or 5 crores, whatever, that is a good information. So you can come out with a story. If you write, if you get, that is authentic news, then you can write, yes, the cost of the travel cost, and Prime Minister's, one travel cost so many crores. That is one story. And if that story is very interesting, I'm sure if you publish it, a newspaper may publish your story. Why? Because it is interesting. How much money? So right to information is one way, is one source from which you can get a lot of information, and it doesn't cost much. If you get good stories from the Right to Information Act, it will make a very good story. For instance, there is some corruption case against somebody, any politician, any leading politician, whether in the ruling party or in the opposition. If you ask some intelligent question, and if you get an information, and if you put it on your own Facebook, and you pass it on to a particular, say, Times of India or Indian Express or PTI or any news agency, they would pick it up and they may publish it. All of a sudden, they may be quoting you, and you will become a celebrity, and you will be well known in the country. So this is one short way of gaining acceptance. So there, similarly, all you have to do is you have to work hard. As a citizen journalist, journalism is not an easy job. Many people think journalism is a very easy job. Journalism is one of the most difficult jobs. And even if many people think that to be it's a lot of glamour is there. There may be glamour, but at the end of the day, it is you have to slog a lot. When others are slogging, when others are sleeping, you may have to work. When 9/11 happened, and when 9/11 happened in New York, thousands of people were running away from the building, and a group of people were running to the building. And who were those people? There were two types of people who were running to the building. One was journalists, and the other was the fire brigade. So those two people were running there. And I remember one small instance. I was working with the Indian Express at that time. I saw one of my lady colleagues, a reporter. She went to the editor's room and she came out crying from the editor's room. I was shocked why she was crying. So I asked, what happened? Why are you crying? Then she told me at that time there was plague in Europe, Surat. She wanted to go to Surat. When people all over Surat was leaving Surat, one reporter in Indian Express and a lady reporter, she wanted to go to Surat. And why was she crying? She was crying because the editor editor had already chosen another person to be sent there. So this girl was very upset. She was crying. Why? Because she was unable to go to a plague its town, Surat, when thousands of people, in fact, all the people of Surat wanted to leave Surat. A reporter wanted to go there. So that is the beauty of journalism. It's not a very easy job. It's a tough job. Even for a citizen journalist, it is a tough job. For instance, remember those people who went to Karipur, to the aerodrome, to take pictures of the accident. They took pictures and they uploaded it. And that is how, the next day, many newspapers could publish those pictures. It was a tough task for them. It was not an easy job, but yet they did it. So journalism as such is a tough job. Even as a citizen journalist also, it will be a tough job. So don't think that it's an easy job. Yes?
Okay, sir, Lavanya has a question. If you can't take pictures, as in you said that, you should take permission and all that. How are you supposed to take shots in candid sort of situations, candid pictures? If we always look for permission or taking pictures without permission, it's not always possible, right? You want to take pictures and want to publish them no matter how the situation is.
Yeah, picture photography, for instance, whatever, if you want to publish a person's photograph, ideally you should seek his permission. Otherwise, it is bad. A candid shot can also be without revealing, so much. You can also ask permission. Sometimes, you don't have to, get the permission in writing. When you take the camera, the person knows the camera. He may smile at you. At that time, you know that he has already permitted you. You can take a picture. But if a girl protests, then you are not supposed to take a picture. For instance, I personally had an experience when I went to Kottayam. I had gone to a church and I saw one couple, young couple, coming and lighting candles there. I took a picture. Then this girl, they got onto their motorcycle and left. Immediately after leaving the place, they came back to me because the girl had told the boy that their picture was taken. So she came to me. So she asked me, "Did you take the picture?" I said, "Yes, I took the picture." I said, "I took the picture from a distance. In fact, you cannot even be recognized." And I showed the picture on my camera. It was an electronic camera. When I saw the picture, she could not be identified. They could not be identified. They were just lighting the lamp. But when she protested, what I did was I immediately removed it from my camera and I showed her that I removed it. Then she went away happily. So there are ways in which you can take pictures also with permission. You need not have to write, but you know whether the person is permitting you. Similarly, but in a group, if you take a picture of a group, then there is no need for anybody's permission. I remember I was in Mangalore and I was passing by Infosys building, and I took a picture of the building from the road, and two security people came running after me. They asked me, "Why did you take the picture?" I said, "I don't need your permission because I took the picture from the road. This building can be seen by any people, any person who passes by. So why do you prevent me?" And then then the security man asked me, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm a journalist." Then I said, "Journalist." Then they went away. The point is, you don't need permission to take a building's picture from, but I remember I and my wife, she is here sitting next to me. We went to what is that? President Trump's what is that? Photo. Yeah, yeah. We went to we in America, Atlanta. Yeah, we took a picture in a place where we should not have taken the picture, and it was a gambling den. It was a gambling area, and my wife, sat before a slot machine. She was playing, and I took a picture of my wife. And suddenly, and this place belonged to President Trump, Donald Trump. That area was that the gambling den was owned by Trump. The security guards, two, three people immediately came to me. He asked me, "Why did you take a picture?" I said, "I took a picture, but I took a picture of my wife playing the slot." Then he told me that you have to remove it. At that time, the camera was a film camera. So I told him that if it's a film camera, I have taken a lot of pictures. If I take it, then all the pictures will be gone. But I took only one shot. Then then he said, "Okay." Then his officer came. I explained to him, and then he went away. Then I asked him, "Why are you objecting to my photography?" Then he told me there are many rich people sitting there. They may be big people. If I take a picture and it appears in the print, their image will be affected. So photography needs to be, so permission has to be sought before taking a photograph.
I think Lavanya basically asked a question, was a follow up, saying that in terms of if there is an accident or any such sort of unfortunate incident, that generally people do take pictures and sort of post them or publish them in newspapers. So in those
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah, that is true. That unfortunately now everybody in India, everybody has a camera. So everybody thinks he's a photographer. So what happens, anything happens, all of them will take pictures. I recently attended a marriage, and I found everybody taking pictures of the couple. And what was the purpose of this? There was no purpose. I'm sure after that, the ceremony, because standing there, they would not be able to get good pictures. After the ceremony, they will all delete the pictures. That is what we all do. So unfortunately, people want to take photographs. It is, while it may be good for a journalist, it may be good. There is no need to take pictures. But when there is a tragedy, for instance, why should one take pictures? If possible, we should act like human beings. When something happens, as human beings, your responsibility to help that person. At the same time, you may ask, there is a famous picture. It was taken by a Vietnamese photographer. and that photograph showed a naked girl running with the napalm bomb exploding just behind her. And now the question arose: should the photographer have helped that girl, or should he have taken the photograph? The point is, he took the photograph, and then later on, after the photograph, he helped her also. That is a different story. Then what had happened? Because of that particular photograph, the American opinion, public opinion in America about the Vietnam War changed. Nikut's picture was so dramatic, was so influential in changing the public opinion. That photography was great. That photograph was great. So similarly, journalists have a duty. At the same time, if somebody has accident has happened, you should go and help that person instead of taking the photograph. Of course, a photography may also help in identifying the culprit. I agree. But at the same time, a journalist should, first of all, be a good human being. Only a good human being can be a good journalist. So after being a good human being, if you take a picture and if you find that this picture is good and it has some value for the public, then you should publish it. If just because a tragedy took place, you take pictures of the tragic scene, and if you take the pictures of the family, they are all crying, they are all misery. If you take such a picture and you publish it on Facebook or on the social media, you are doing a great injustice to those family or that person. So photography is, so we have, I'm sure, in the course, that we will be teaching you when we should take a photograph, what kind of photographs can be taken, what kind of photographs cannot be taken, and all that. For instance, in Delhi Metro, you are not expected to take pictures of the people or the passengers in the metro, because the whole metro area is banned as far as photography is concerned. Yet, if something, murder happens, if you have a camera, if you take a picture from a distance, that picture may be able to help. Although there is no need, because in metro, all the areas inside the train and outside the train are all covered by CCTV cameras.
Okay, sir, Krishnam has a question saying that is CJ same as a professional journalist? Maybe he has a very sort of tough question. After this course, can I call myself a journalist?
You see, as I said, everybody is born a journalist. Everybody is a journalist. So it's how you practice it. So what is a person who works in a newspaper, of course, he has certain limitations. A citizen journalist doesn't have that limitation. But those limitations are also in a way good. Because as a newspaper person, when you report something, there are people to check you. There are people to check your facts. There are also people to give you a good headline. But when you are a citizen journalist, all that you have to do yourself. You have to write yourself, you have to correct it, you have to spell check it, you have to edit it, you have to give a good headline, you have to decide the length, because on Facebook or in social media, length doesn't matter. You can publish a 1 lakh word article also, you can write a 200 word article also. So the choice is yours. So citizen journalists have certain advantages which a professional journalist may not have. Because a professional journalist, at the end of the month, he will get his salary. A citizen journalist may not get his salary. But if a citizen journalist, if he is good, he can also branch out. He can also become a good journalist. For instance, today, when newspapers recruit journalists, they also go through their profile. They see what kind of writing do they do. They can assess a person by looking at their Facebook posts or their Twitter feeds. They can judge a person. So in many ways, for instance, even a professor, when appointments are made, they check what you do on your Facebook, what you do in social media. So if you are qualified, if you know the limitations, if you know all the parameters of citizen journalism, and you function within the parameters of citizen journalism, then you will come out better than a person who doesn't know the ABC of journalism.
Okay, sir, I think Lieutenant Commander Amajit Patnaik, I hope I'm getting his rank right, has a question. He finds your talk inspiring. Sir, he's talking about judicial scrutiny of every single sort of work. So judiciary has its own instruments of fact checking, which are probably subjective in nature. So how does one ensure every piece of work stands for judicial sort of scrutiny? Because I know it can be subjective also.
Yes, in India is one place where a journalist does not enjoy any special right. You may see stickers on the cars of journalists, press, but it doesn't entitle you for any special rights. In India, whatever rights a citizen enjoys is the right a journalist also enjoys. Whatever rights a citizen in India enjoys, that is the right a journalist, whether he is a citizen journalist or whether he is a print journalist or whether he is a television journalist, enjoys, which means you are subject to the law of the land. Whatever laws are applicable to the citizens, those laws are also applicable to you. You cannot abuse a person. Similarly, a journalist cannot abuse a person. You cannot, right? You cannot defame a person. A citizen cannot defame a person, and as a journalist, you cannot also defame a person. And there are why journalists get away with defamation, etc., is because the citizens, many citizens do not know how to take the journalist to task. So ideally, we should know the laws of the land. I'm not saying that every citizen, no citizen can be knowing all the laws of the country. But there is also a rule, there is also a provision which says lack that if you do not know law is not an argument for you. If suppose you say that I did not know that the law was such that I should not have taken, you are expected to, as a citizen, you are expected to know all the laws of the land, because you can't go to the court and tell the judge that, sir, I'm sorry because I did not know the law. I did not know that I should not slap a teacher. I did not know that I should not, take a naked picture of a girl. These are laws of the land. We as citizens, we as citizen journalists, we as journalists should know all the laws of the land. Yes.
Oh, sir, sorry. Okay, I was muted. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
Sir, my question, Robensi has a question on conflict reporting. It is said that you should not be emotional while reporting from conflict zones. But how is it, can it be effective if you're not emotional when you're reporting from these zones?
yeah. You see, one has to be a little bit emotional. One will become, if he is a human being, one will become a little bit emotional. But at the same time, emotion should not, come out so much that it dwarfs all your other qualities. For instance, if you are a journalist, if you are a reporter, you have to do your job. If you are a policeman, you have to do your job. You may see a crime. You cannot be standing there and crying with the people who are in misery. That is being emotional. But as a journalist, you have to do your job. I remember once in Patna, one day, one evening we were discussing what should be the first lead story. There was no good lead story. Then we finally chose one subject that was Prime Minister at that time was Rajiv Gandhi. He made some statement saying that in India corruption will be tackled, something like that. In 2 years' time, everything will be all right. So we thought, we knew that it was a bad story. We decided, because there was no other good story, we decided to play it up as the lead story. Prime Minister says corruption will be thrown out of India, something like that. That was the lead. As the page was being made, the news editor, came running. He said, Mr. Philip, acha story aa gaya. So he was very happy. What was the story? The story was that in Punjab, some 40 people were killed by militants in Punjab at that time. So he saw it as a lead story. It was a good lead story, obviously. So he was very happy. Of course, for a moment, he forgot that 40 people were also killed. 40 families lost their breadwinner. 40 families, some of them lost their mothers, some of them lost their sisters, some of them lost their father, some of them lost their mothers. That idea did not occur to my news editor because he was obsessed with getting a good story as the lead story. I won't blame him. But that doesn't mean that the news editor should, oh, it is very sad. He should sit down and start crying about the 40 people, 40 families who were affected by the accident. No, one has to do one's duty. Duty comes first. That is very important. I remember one small incident. I will tell you, there was one Malayalam great Malayalam newsreader. His name was Shankar Narayan. All the Malayalis know him. He was a great newsreader. One morning, he met with an accident at Krishi Bhavan. He met with an accident and he walked all the way to All India Radio. He went there, opened his room, and when he opened his room and he opened his drawer also, then he fell unconscious and blood was coming out of his head. And he found Shankar Narayanan in a state of, he was unconscious, he was on his seat, and he walked nearly 1 kilometer, may not be 1 kilometer, half a kilometer from Krishi Bhavan to Agashvani Bhavan. Why? Because the idea wanted to come to the studio so that he can read the news at 7:25. That is duty. So duty comes first. So emotion is fine. Emotion cannot be a substitute for duty. Duty as a journalist comes first.
Okay, Sunit has a question. Jaswant, can you please unmute him, please? Yeah, Sunit, please go ahead. If you can. Jaswant?
Yes.
I'm trying to unmute her, but I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some problem. Okay. Sir, okay. By the time she unmutes, Lieutenant Commander Patnaik, his question basically, sir, was like how to be because what you write sort of for judicial scrutiny, it will be subjective for a stand in court of law. Sort of some judge may find it right, some judge may find it sort of contempt or defamation and all those lines. So can we be a little sort of should be a little free to write, as in because we are journalists rather than worrying about judicial scrutiny always.
Yeah, judicial scrutiny, we should be careful, particularly when you write about judicial issues, because our courts have the power to, as the contempt power, they can, take action against a person if the court thinks that this person has caused contempt. And so contempt law is very strict law. And why Mr. Prashant Bhushan got away with only 1 rupee was because he would have been punished because the court realized that a lot of people are supporting it. That is why he got away. In spite of that, he had to pay. He will have to pay that 1 rupee, which is punishment. So court has this power, and not only court, even the citizens also have the power. If, for instance, suppose somebody writes something nasty about me, then what is the remedy for me? My remedy is to go to the court, is to seek appeal, is to file a case of defamation. So the law has to be understood. We should know. So we have certain limits. So the fact is also not a defense. In India, even fact is not a defense when it comes to contempt of court. You may be true. The fact, you may know that a particular judge will be correct. You may have seen that the judge has taken money. But even fact is not a accepted defense in a court of law. So you have to work within the system. And if you are a good journalist, you will be able to know how you can write for instance, law permits you to criticize a judgment. I can say that a particular judgment by a particular judge is utterly wrong. I can say this will not stand judicial scrutiny. I can say this judgment is not based on facts. I can say that judgment is not at all good. I can say this judgment will have disastrous consequences for the nation. All that I can say. But I cannot say that the judge is, because the judge belongs to a particular community, that is why he gave the judgment. I can't say that this judgment is a female, that is why she gave this judgment. I cannot say that this judge belongs to a particular caste, that is why he gave this kind of judgment. That will be contempt of court. But at the same time, I can say, very boldly I can write that this judgment is wrong. This judgment will not stand public scrutiny. All that you can say, you can criticize the judgment, but you cannot personally attack the judge. So that is the difference between there is a difference you have to bear in mind when you write a news story concerning the courts or any judicial matter. As a matter of fact, before you touch upon any judicial subject, we should be more factual. We should be, check the figures. For instance, if you are writing about something, the constitution is there, under what law, all the CRPC laws are there. It is all available online. You can check the facts. For instance, if somebody has been charged under section so and so of the IPC, Indian Penal Code, or Criminal Procedure Code, you can check that particular code, and you can also find out what are the punishments which will be given for that. Which means a journalist, before writing, should be and will be able to know such details. It is not difficult.
Okay, Sunit, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Philip, sir, my question is, because this discussion is going around in media academic circle, that when we don't have citizen lawyer, or we don't have citizen engineer, citizen doctor, that is the common citizen doing this kind of thing, why should there be the special category called citizen journalist? Though personally I feel that citizen journalists are necessary and they are essential cog in the system of media. So, sir, what is your take on that? This new discussion it is going on in media academic circle, that when we don't have this citizen specialist in different areas, why in journalism, sir?
Yeah. See, for instance, in India today, there are cocks who work as doctors. They are also doing some service. They may not be qualified but they are also doing some service. For instance, when you construct a building, you may not employ a contractor. Sorry, you may not employ an engineer. If you have your own money and if you have your own plan, then I myself, plan my house. I am not a civil engineer, but I planned my house. I drew a sketch of my house and gave it the contractor, and of course he modified it, and then the house was built. So citizen contractors are there, citizen advocates are there, then citizen doctors. Citizen doctors are also there. And why in journalism? Journalism, because unlike other professions, journalism is a profession which doesn't require any particular, for instance, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to practice in the court, it is not possible because the court will not allow you to practice. But if you have your own case, if you are appearing, if you are a convict, if you are facing a trial, then you can be a citizen lawyer also. You can argue your own case. So that is possible. In journalism, why it is possible? Because in journalism, journalism is something, which you can write. Your writing doesn't affect any people. It affects people only when they read it, when they are influenced by it. If you write on your Facebook, and if the people find that it is rubbish that you are writing or I am writing, then nobody will read it. But if I write something in substance, if they realize that there is substance in what I write, then people will read it. So a journalist doesn't, as I mentioned, Mahatma Gandhi was not a journalist. He was a lawyer in South Africa. He started his own paper, and he became a successful journalist. And as I mentioned, he is the greatest journalist India produced, and no journalist has written as much as he wrote. So, which shows that journalism is one profession which everybody can practice, because we are born journalists. We are not born lawyers. We are not born doctors, but we are born lawyers because we practice reporting, we practice editing, we practice communication all the time. When you are talking to your wife, when you are talking to your father, when you are talking to your daughter, your son, you are reporting something. They are reporting to you. You are correcting, which means you are editing, which means everybody is a journalist. That is why everybody can be a citizen journalist.
Okay, sir, Padmini has a question. This is, I think you will like it. Being thick-skinned is a prerequisite to being a journalist. A certain section may not like what you write, but is that a prerequisite, sir? Being thick-skinned?
Skin. What did you say?
Thick-skinned. Thick-skinned.
Yeah, thick-skinned.
Yes.
Yeah. You see, a journalist is, a journalist, many people think that journalists are respected. The fact is that journalists are not respected. This is what I have learned. Journalists are tolerated. That would be a better word. Journalists are tolerated. They are seen as a nuisance. And they are tolerated, so there is not much prestige for a journalist. They may say, because people also have some fear of journalists. If this fellow writes something against you, if you shoot something, if he takes your picture, and if you are corrupt, he may be scared of you. that doesn't mean that he respects journalists. Journalists are generally speaking not respected. At the same so a person can be a good journalist only if he has some thin skin which is thick. If it is a very thin skin, it is very difficult to practice journalism. Why? Journalism is a risky profession, and as I said, it is not very. It's not a very enjoyable profession. Of course, at the end of the day, a journalist. Once you become a journalist, you will never cease to be a journalist. Why? Because there is some attraction. Because in the morning when I see my print, my whatever I wrote in the newspapers, it gives me a lot of satisfaction. I remember there was one Haji Mastan in Mumbai. He was a great smuggler. I wrote a profile of Haji Mastan, and one day I was traveling by DTC bus in Delhi, and the person sitting next to me was reading an article on Haji Mastan, which I had read. He was reading it. I did not tell him that I had written it, but I felt very happy. I felt on top of the world. Why? Because that person was reading my article. It gives me some satisfaction. So that is the kind of satisfaction a journalist gets. Otherwise, journalism is not a great profession, and it is meant for people who are thick-skinned.
Okay, sir, I think somebody, I don't know if you would like to be named, but on right to maintain confidentiality of sources when you're doing a story. Confidentiality of sources, sir. If you have a source, sort of, that's the journalist's sort of prerogative and sort of right to protect that source.
Yeah, a journalist is as good as his sources. A reporter is as good as his sources. A journalist's primary job is to build sources. And who are the sources? Sources are people in authority. And it need not be the president of India. It need not be the prime minister. You cannot expect the president of India to call you and give you information. Of course, there was one, Mr. G.K. Reddy. He was the bureau chief of the Hindu in Delhi. And he used to get information from the president himself because he was very close to the president. And that kind of sources, not everybody can have. But sources are important. So a good journalist is one who has good sources. Sources are people in the government who can give you information based on which you can do stories. And which is the greatest story in the 20th century? The greatest story was Watergate scandal. How did Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward got their stories? They got their stories from a person called Wood the Deep Throat. Deep Throat was a person in the administration. He was passing on information. That is how Watergate scandal that became a big scandal, and it resulted in the loss of office for the President Richard Nixon. And that was possible because of the source which he identified as Deep Throat. Later on, many years later, in fact, many decades later, the Deep Throat, the identity was revealed. By then he had retired from the government service and he was a senior citizen at that time. So cultivating source is one of the primary jobs of a reporter or a journalist.
So protecting the source, maintaining that source, secrecy of that source, maintaining that secrecy of that source.
Yeah, for a journalist, it is very important that the source should be protected. I remember one journalist, I won't name that journalist, he published a story, and he published some documents in the Indian Express, and the documents were given by a senior police officer, and the IB in charge, one Mr. Narayanan was the IB in charge. He could easily identify who that police officer was. What had happened? The police officer was dismissed, not dismissed. He was put under suspension, and a black mark was entered in his personal report, and the poor person had to remain. Why did that happen? Because that journalist should not have passed on that information, should not have published that particular document. A journalist's primary responsibility is to protect his source, because then only he can get more information. So a primary responsibility of a newspaper is to protect his source. Now the question comes, If suppose a terrorist gives you some information, that's a different ball game. I won't comment on it right here. But in the normal circumstances, a person's primary responsibility as a journalist is to protect his source, because the source is necessary to get information. And without source, who will get information? Nowadays, what happens, many persons are not getting, good stories. Why? Because people are unwilling to talk. People are scared. That is why people are scared, and we are not getting information which will show the government, whatever be the government, in a bad light.
Okay, sir, we have many more questions. So I think you want to speak a lot about this question, but you can keep it short so that we can take other questions.
Okay.
Can we say that today's broadcast media is following the media ethics? That is Muskan Khandelwal's question.
Which one? Which one?
Sir, can we say today's broadcast media is following media ethics?
Yeah. See, I cannot say that ethics was followed all the time. Earlier also, there were ethics were not followed in many cases. Now, because journalism, ethics is one subject which I teach journalism, and when I teach, the day when I teach ethics, there will be few students. So ethics is not very important. That is what people consider. So the society has also journalists. Who are the journalists? Journalists are not people who are imported from the space. They are people among us. If we as a society is corrupt, journalists would also be corrupt. You cannot expect, a journalist to be lily white when everyone is black, or you cannot expect a journalist to be black when everyone else is white. The point I wanted to make was that journalists represent the society. They come from the same society. So I cannot generalize saying that all the broadcast journalism, all the broadcasters are not following ethics. Some of them, or many of them. There may be some who are not following. There may be special instances when ethics was not followed for many reasons. I agree, but generally speaking, journalists are doing a reasonably good job. Yes, since you said more questions are there.
Yeah, okay. Sir, Archana has one question. I think this is the final one. Okay, I'm writing a story on someone and she tells me that a property is worth 5 crore or she's a PhD. Should I check it before publishing the story if somebody is claiming it?
Yeah, first of all, you have to check. First of all, you have to conclude yourself whether that information is vital to the story. If the person has 5 crores in their bank account, is that important? It would be important if he is an ordinary person. If he's an ordinary person, it is not important. But if that person is a person who has been arrested, like Swapna in Kerala, and if a journalist is able to find out that she has 5 crore rupees in her bank account, that is a vital information which she should pass. She should, of course, check and then pass on. Similarly, if the person is a PhD, it is not very important, if that person has PhD. But if the PhD is important, if he has claimed some benefit, claiming that he is a PhD, when you know that that person is not a PhD, then you have every right to mention that she doesn't have a PhD. So PhD, etc. These are all based on person. These are all person-to-person stories. Yeah.
Okay, just one, can you please unmute Ansan Thomas? I think he has a question he wants to ask. That will be the last question because we have very little time, please. Yeah. Please
Thank you. Thanks, Kumar. Thank you very much, Mr. A.J. Philip, for your informative as well as inspiring talk today. Citizen journalist is also a responsible citizen also. As a country governed by democratic system, we can raise issues or opinion about our leaders itself. Criticizing our rulers nowadays become a risky thing. But I came across or I read many of your open letters to the political as well as religious leaders of the country. Yesterday itself, I read one of your open letter in Facebook regarding our late President Pranab Mukherjee, who attended the RSS meeting. So what was your experience from all those open letters? Did you get any result from that? How do you connect writing open letters directly with the citizen journalism? Any rules to follow when you write to leaders of the country? Thank you.
Personally, I have written many open letters to many leaders, including I have written several letters to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I have written to Priyanka Gandhi. I have written to many leaders, many chief ministers, many political leaders. So because this format, I enjoy writing letters. That format, allows me to say many things which I want to say. So that format, allows me all that. Many a time it has yielded results also. For instance, I wrote one letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and he sent me a reply also. Similarly, I wrote a letter to Maneka Gandhi. She wrote a reply, to which I also replied again. So I have received some responses, and some of the letters have yielded results in other ways also. I don't want to boast about it. The fact is that it's a medium which I enjoy. I have written so many open letters. Now I'm thinking of collecting all these open letters and publishing it as a book. And yeah, that is what personally, it's a forum which I enjoy. Because a letter can be a short letter, it can be a long letter also. I enjoy writing long letters. So my limit is 2,000 words. And I write letters to these people in 2,000 words. I express my opinion. For instance, I wrote at that time, this letter to Sri Pranab Mukherjee was written when he was alive. I wrote it about 1.5 years ago. So at that time, so this was uploaded. Now, that's all. The letter was written long back. Yeah.
Okay, I think, sir, thank you very much. I think we are about to end because we are at the fag end of it. So Jaswant will have something to say about today and tomorrow. Okay, Jaswant, please, right? So thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Good evening, everyone. I feel privileged to propose a formal vote of thanks to Mr. A.J. Philip, a renowned journalist and Secretary and Chief Executive of Tipalaya. So the session was really insightful. I must say that you brought a lot of energy into the room. I'm sure our students would have learned a lot from the personal experiences that you shared. Thank you so much for letting us know what it means to be a citizen journalist. Our students would have felt proud to have joined this course. I thank Mr. Kumaraswamy for moderating the session so well. I'm grateful to Ms. Jennifer Arul, Mr. Meredith John, and Commodore Lokesh Batra, our faculty members who are present at this occasion in this session. Thank you, Ravi, for the handy support you have been always giving us. Last but not the least, I thank our students for being in time and complying with the housekeeping rules. We are looking forward to meeting you all again tomorrow, same time, same place, and our Zoom room. And Mr. Kumaraswamy will share a short feedback form with all of you. Please do fill it religiously. It will help us in understanding our requirements, your requirements, and improving ourselves as well. Also, Mr. Kumaraswamy will be creating a small WhatsApp group for the students for easier coordination. Thank you once again. See you all tomorrow with a new set of lessons. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.